Fuck. Yeah. Well, Adam has to get back in. God damn it. All right. All right. Well, wait. Let me tweet this out. Let me tweet this out. You guys got us? Let me know if you do. I think we should be good. Technology sometimes. It's a pain in the ass. There's only so much we can do. But anyway, thanks for being patient with us, fellas and ladies. I'm tweeting this out right now, and then we can get started. Adam, you got me all right?
Yeah.
All right. We were talking about the New York Knicks. We talked about Burks. I think that all got through before we cut out. What are we doing with well, let's start with the big guys here. We've got Burks out of the way. He's expected to play today. Hasn't played in like 3.5 weeks. Julius Randle's price point has come down to the 8,800 range. This is the first time he's been below 9,000 now in like 11 or 12 games, which is really remarkable. And they're going against the Golden State Warriors team that, you know, they're better than they were last year. You have a healthy Draymond Green, a healthy Steph Curry, and defensively, believe it or not, they're actually middle of the league. I thought they'd be a little bit worse than that, but they're middle of the league, 109 defensive rating. They are, however, playing at a very elevated pace, the third fastest pace in the league for the Golden State Warriors. It's kind of interesting for this matchup for the New York Knicks, who are playing at the slowest pace in the league. Get this. It's almost a 9 possession per 48 differential between the Knicks and the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, you can tell Tom Thibodeau is back in the league. You know, 1990 style basketball. But yeah, huge pace-off spot for the Knicks. And Randall's the type of guy that can really take advantage of that because he contributes in every category. Like he can do so much with the extra possessions, whether it's assists, rebounds, scoring, obviously. And he's still averaging 37.1 minutes per game, tied with RJ Barrett for the most minutes per game on this team. So Randall, I think, still looks great. The salaries come down a little bit. We had gotten his price to where it was he never became like a bad play, but he started to have a really small margin of error and was very clearly priced for his upside more so than his normal output. Now you're getting him back 8,800 on DraftKings, I think 9K on FanDuel. So much more favorably priced there. I think he should be one of the highest owned guys on the slate. He's projected to be right now. I have no issue with that whatsoever. Like you said, Golden State's been fine defensively. Draymond Green is at the very least a pain in the ass, maybe still a good defender. But I'm not too concerned about any of that for Randall at the salary.
Talk to me about RJ Barrett, who's getting a lot of minutes. Like you said, Tom Thibodeau's back, right? His price continues to decline, but 38 minutes last game. In competitive spots, you're going to get a lot of burn from RJ Barrett. And it's funny because from a fantasy point perspective, not necessarily a per minute basis because he's playing more minutes than Jrue Holiday. But if you look at Jrue Holiday and RJ Barrett, very similar price points, very similar fantasy point per minute production. Now, Jrue Holiday's been a better per minute guy, but RJ Barrett is getting to the same end by just playing a lot more minutes. So they're similarly priced, just very similar outlooks for these type of guys, given their overall profiles and minutes and per minutes production. But yeah, he's $6,900 on DraftKings in a really fast pace-up matchup against the Warriors. What do you think about Barrett potentially in a close game getting you 36, 38 minutes?
Yeah, he's just one of those guys where if he fits into my lineup at the end, I'm fine with it. I think that on FanDuel, where you have to roster the 2 small forwards, getting him at 6,700 is pretty valuable. It's not a guy that I'm going out of my way to target. I think he's priced about where he should be. Averages about 0.9 DraftKings points per minute, but he should play huge minutes. And again, if I can't quite get to Middleton at small forward, for example, but I love the rest of my lineup and don't want to sacrifice anything, then landing on RJ Barrett's perfectly fine.
Anybody else from the Knicks that stands out to you?
Yeah, I went on a 2-minute tangent about the point guard position while nobody could hear me. So I guess I'll go back to that. But I think the point guard position is a pretty nice spot to target in tournaments because there's a lot of minutes volatility here. Elfrid Payton hasn't been particularly productive this year. 0.87 DraftKings points per minute. He's someone that we know has a high ceiling at times. He can rebound well enough and get enough assists. But he's 5,800 on DraftKings, only 5,300 on FanDuel, though. So if he does get north of 30 minutes like he did last game, he played about 33 minutes, he gives you a pretty high ceiling at that price point, even though his per minute production hasn't been as high as we would like this year. But it is, a pace-off spot. Immanuel Quickley, though, only 4,100 on DraftKings. He only played about 14.8 minutes last game, but he's averaged 23 minutes per game over his last six games. Payton over that time's averaged 28 minutes per game. Quickley's averaged 1.02 DraftKings points per minute this year. So he's kind of like Bobby Portis, where if for any reason he gets more than, say, 20 minutes at 4,100, he's going to be a really good play most likely because if he plays well, he might get a few more minutes. If Payton plays poorly, Quickley might get a few more minutes. If Payton gets in foul trouble or something like that, Quickley gets more run. So there's a lot of ways Quickley can get more minutes, and if that happens, he's very likely to really outperform his salary. So Quickley's one of those cheap value guys that it's easy to see how he fails, and the answer is that Payton plays well and Quickley plays 16 minutes. But it's also pretty easy to see how he succeeds, and he has a high ceiling if he does get that extra run.
Wob, worldwide Wob, Rob Perez. He did this super cut of all of Quickley's floaters this season, and he's like, Quickley might have one of the best running floaters in the game. And before I watch this video, I'm thinking that seems like a pretty outrageous take, given that, he's been playing for 10 games now, 11 games. I went and watched this. I was amazed by how easily these running floaters are how easily he can convert them into points. I was shocked. But, if he can get there and if he's finding ways to score, which he has been, $4,100 seems really, really affordable. So the way I see it, Adam, is over his first 6 games, I think it was, over his first 6 games, his usage was basically in the basement. Over his last 5 games, though, he's got double-digit field goal attempts in all of them. He's attempted 6+ threes in 3 of his last 5. So, by the way, his assist rate over that span, given his low minute total, actually hasn't been all that bad either. I think you might be onto something in that. Could it be an ugly game from him? Sure, it could. Any young player, any rookie playing 21 potentially minutes, 15 minutes last game can give you some awful starts. But just given what I'm seeing from him, pretty high usage over the past 5 games, and the ability to at least serve decently as a playmaker, I think there's plenty to like there. And
he's played 196 minutes now this season, 401 possessions, 24% usage, 25% assist percentage. And basically what it comes down to, and it's something that you and I talk about a lot when it comes to tournaments, give me players with questionable minutes, but a path to get more minutes, not someone where it's like, oh yeah, if 6 guys get hurt, then he'll play more. But someone with like a realistic path, but questionable minutes, but that produces at a high rate over someone that's going to play 28 or 30 minutes, but is just a terrible scorer or fantasy producer in general, where you have to somehow have them have their best game of their career. I'll embrace the minutes volatility a lot quicker than trying to get a guy to shoot 95% from the field. And on top of that, he's backing up. The easiest way for him to get minutes is he's backing up Elfrid Payton, who anybody who's played DFS for any amount of time knows that Elfrid Payton has very unstable minutes because Elfrid Payton very frequently gets himself benched mid-game.
For sure. Yeah, look, over the last 5 games, and you have a 24% usage rate, you're $4,100 in a pace-up spot. I can get on board with that. Over that same span, he has a 25% assist rate as well, and his fantasy point per minute production over his last 5 is north of 1 fantasy point per minute. Count me in, man. A lot of talk and chat about Reggie Bullock. Again, remember, we are getting Alec Burks back in the rotation today. Your thoughts on Reggie Bullock at 4,300?
I'm not interested. For one, he's the opposite of what I was just saying about Quickley. He's averaged 0.63 DraftKings points per minute. If he were playing 34 minutes, he would be a play just based on being on the floor. But he would still have a pretty decent chance of failing. Now it's really tough to give him a lot of minutes because I expect him, based on how the rotations have looked recently, I expect him to be the one hurt most by Alec Burks coming back. Burks does actually add a little bit more risk to Peyton and Quickly as well, if I'm wrong about the rotation, because Burks is a capable ball handler. But based on the way the rotations look, I think that he most likely is going to back up Reggie Bullock, and they're probably going to split 48 minutes in some fashion, whether it's 24-24 or 26-22 or something like that. Either way, I'm not confident in Bullock getting enough minutes to really be a good player.
Just checking to see if we had any news come in, but it appears that so far, nope, we do not. So if we do, we'll let you know. And obviously, Live Before Lock that comes up immediately after this show, we'll give you all of the news, answer all of your questions that come in over that hour prior to lock. That is going to be Josh Engleman and Greg Ehrenberg taking you up to lock. And then past that for a half hour, definitely hang out with them for that Jock Market segment. It's a lot of fun. I've been watching them as well while I'm putting lineups together after I put it together, maybe eating dinner or something like that, because I've enjoyed it. And I wasn't sure what it was going to look like, but it's a lot of fun. And if you don't know what Jock Market is, they've essentially turned DFS into the stock market, into the stock exchange, I should say. You don't have to wait till the end of any game to make moves, to win money. You can buy and sell shares of players in real time for real money with guaranteed payouts for all of the shares at the end of the night. It essentially is like the stock market. There's an IPO phase as well, an IPO stage throughout the day where you can get players early before the games happen, before they start quote unquote trading, and you can get phenomenal value and then go and sell them. Like Adam and I have been neck deep in these Top Shot moments, and you get in, you buy some of these guys at a discount that are undervalued. Like Jokic just last week jumped in, and I jumped in and grabbed him, and his price is skyrocketing. Adam went out and grabbed a bunch of guys that said, you know what? They haven't caught on to this yet. Now, 2 days later, you're selling them for 3 times the price. It's the same concept on Jock Market, and you can win a lot of money doing it. If you like money and you like having a competitive edge and you think you're smart enough to figure out which guys should be going for more but aren't, this is the place to do it. Very cool format for NBA, NFL, PGA. You make real money every hour, every minute, every second, and you can use, like I said, that pregame IPO to pick up shares of your favorite players, then buy them, sell them, get more, or whatever you want to do throughout the game. Download the app. It's Jock Market, JockMKT, and use the promo code Awesemo20, AWESEMO20, for a $20 bonus on your first deposit. Check it out. Download it. I think you'll enjoy it. And if you want to spend some time with the fellas, Josh and Greg, 30 minutes after lock, going over this, hitting on players, buying shares, selling shares, everything you can throughout the game while you're sweating your other lineups, join them for that 30 minutes. Use that promo code Awesemo20 for $20 on your first deposit. It's Jock Market, sponsor of the Deeper Dive. Anything else for the New York Knicks?
Mitchell Robinson's in that same group of centers that we talked about with Harrell, with Brook Lopez. Not the most exciting, but he is playing big minutes. Played another 34 minutes last game. He's averaging 30 minutes per game this season. His per minute production is down from last year, but his playing time is up. He's the most expensive out of that group, but he doesn't look drastically different than Harrell, than Lopez, than Steven Adams. So whoever's the lowest owned out of that group will end up being an appealing tournament target, I think.
Okay. So on the other side, you've got the Golden State Warriors. Again, very fast pace, but this is a massive pace down spot for them, Adam. I don't know how much it matters to you on a 3-game slate, but you can answer that question right now. What are you doing with Stephen Curry?
So it's a pace down spot, and it's also a good Knicks defense. They're 5th in the league in defensive rating. So you have a team a team playing at the slowest pace in the league, and also allowing the 5th fewest points per 100 possessions. So it is a tough spot. That isn't to say that Steph Curry can't go out and have a monster game, because he's Steph Curry. He's averaging 34.5 minutes per game. He's got a 30+% usage rate, 30+% assist percentage. Everything on Curry's end looks great. The problem that I run into is comparing him to a cheaper LeBron James, who's averaging more fantasy points per minute this year and is likely to play more minutes than normal. A slightly more expensive, Giannis on DraftKings is only $900 more than Curry and averages more fantasy points per minute, obviously. So I think it's really tough to prioritize Curry amongst these payoff options on the slate. That being said, he still has that really high ceiling. Right now, though, he's projected to be top 10 in ownership. If that's the case, I think I would rather just be getting more Giannis, getting more LeBron. But if Curry's ownership does come down, then he starts to become more appealing for me in tournaments.
What about Draymond Green? He was a couple of years ago. You loved what you got from this guy. I mean, you and I would talk about him every night as, hey, if you need 40 fantasy points, go to Dre. He'll give you close to a triple double, maybe 8 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists, a few blocks, a couple steals, almost every single time. But this season it has not been the same. It wasn't the same last season either. Has he been respectable in the minutes that he's played? I guess you could say that, but just virtually no usage whatsoever, Adam. His shot blocking rate and his steal rate are both down. But on a 3-game slate, it's something that we can't exactly ignore. His usage rate is 11%. His rebound rate is 9%, single digits for the first time in his career. He still has a high assist rate, but his block rate is 0.7. This is a guy who has a 3% career block rate. You're just not getting the same Draymond Green.
Yeah, you're not, but he's also not priced like the same Draymond Green either. So the way he's priced right now, I think he's just kind of like a neutral play where if he fits into a lineup that I really like, then I'm fine with him. But I'm definitely not starting my lineup with Draymond Green, and I'm not looking at it saying like, oh, this is great, I have Draymond Green. He's averaging 0.85 DraftKings points per minute this year. If this game's close, you're probably getting 30, 31 minutes out of him. He's fine. Like if you just take his average production, without accounting for the fact that this is a below average matchup against the Knicks, but you'd be getting, if he plays 30, 31 minutes, you're getting 25, 26 fantasy points at 5,500. The biggest issue I run into with Green is that his usage rate is so low. So like there are some guys where you're like, okay, he's appropriately priced. He probably won't do great, but he has a high ceiling because he'll go out there and shoot a lot, or he'll go out there and grab a bunch of rebounds, or he gets a lot of blocks. Draymond's not doing any of those things right now. So, yeah, his assist percentage is high, but you can only get so far on that, especially when Curry's still going to get assists as well. I kind of question the ceiling that Draymond has, whereas like if you compare him for $200 more on this team, you have Kelly Oubre, who is averaging very similar per minute production. He's averaging 0.06 of a fantasy point per minute more than Draymond, but similar playing time on average, similar per minute production. But I think Oubre just gives you a much higher ceiling because he's the better scorer. He's willing to take shots. He's going to go out there and take 5+ 3-pointers and 10+ shots in pretty much every game. He's going to get some defensive stats. He's going to get some rebounds. Like between these two guys, they're getting similar ownership. I think their median projections are pretty close, but I would just rather go to Oubre because I think he's the guy that's more likely to win you a tournament over Draymond.
All right. Yeah, it's a fair point. What about Wiseman? He's had some games where foul trouble has been a serious issue. As a matter of fact, he has 4+ personal fouls in 4 straight games. You can't really predict foul trouble, and when you try to, you start to get yourself in trouble unless it's like last year's Mitchell Robinson. But 4,500, the guy does have a decent ceiling at his price point. What are your thoughts on James Wiseman against the Knicks? And then we can move on to the third and final game.
I think Wiseman's my favorite value play on the slate, talking like sub 5K guys.
Yeah.
So he was really popular against the Lakers because in the 2 games prior to that, he had set career highs in playing time with 26 minutes and 27 minutes. Then, of course, he came out, played 13 minutes against the Lakers, but that was a game where he was just in massive foul trouble, picked up his 5th foul early in the second half. He basically just didn't have a chance in that game. Came back from that game, played another 25 minutes last game. So excluding just throwing out that Lakers game where he had no chance because of foul trouble, you've gotten 26, 27, and 25 minutes from a guy who prior to that was averaging 19 minutes per game since Draymond Green returned. So I love that the playing time has been there when he's not in foul trouble. At this price tag, I'll take my chances with foul trouble. If that's the only thing really keeping him off the floor at this point, then I'll take my chances because he's averaged almost 1.1 DraftKings points per minute. He's sub 5K, 46 or 4,500 on DraftKings, 44 on FanDuel. The center position doesn't have that top end talent tonight that it normally does, so the opportunity cost isn't as high. I'll take my chances that Wiseman can stay out of foul trouble, especially with against Mitchell Robinson, assuming Draymond is dealing with Randall. You're talking about Wiseman spending a lot of time against a center with an 11% usage rate.
I honestly thought Wiseman would be a lot chalkier than he is. So I was pleasantly surprised to see that wasn't the case. when we talked about it earlier in the show, is there any value that you can get to that you feel good about? I think we've hit on a couple of them already that, of course, they're volatile, they're risky, but you got Quickly and you have Wiseman both in that low to mid 4K range that can give you pretty solid games. And I'm okay with that on abbreviated slate like this. Anything else for Golden State?
I mentioned liking Oubre. I guess Andrew Wiggins deserves a mention just because he's Andrew Wiggins and will probably play mid-30s in minutes. He's kind of in that RJ Barrett category for me. He doesn't play as many minutes as Barrett, but he produces at a higher rate. They project pretty similarly. I'm not dying to get either guy in my lineup, but if I end up with Andrew Wiggins, then I'm fine with it.
All right. Last one. We'll turn it over to Greg and Josh after this. New Orleans and Utah. The Pelicans, I think I mentioned it earlier, they have, by a small margin, the lowest implied total on the slate, 104.75. They're 7-point dogs in Utah. And I guess ultimately when you look at a team like New Orleans, they just have so many mouths to feed. You've got Zion, you've got Ingram just having another really strong season. Bledsoe and Ball as the third and fourth wheel in no specific order. And then Steven Adams at the 5, who is not necessarily taking usage away from any of these players, but has had some decent enough games this year. Honestly, Adam, start wherever you want. There's a lot to digest with the New Orleans team in a, I guess, mediocre matchup.
Yeah, not a great spot against Utah, and I think pretty fair pricing across the board. There's just a lot of guys here where I think there's more underpriced players, either at their price point and or at their position on other teams, but they're not really overpriced either. Like you look at Brandon Ingram, he's averaging 35 minutes per game this year, about 1.2 DraftKings points per minute in the games he's played with Zion, 28.5% usage rate, 25% assist percentage. Everything's really good there. I would rather roster Chris Middleton for $900 less at small forward is the problem. But it makes them good tournament targets because that's going to be the way that most of the field thinks, and it's going to drive ownership down on someone like Ingram relative to Middleton. So, Ingram I think is a good tournament play. Zion a little bit cheaper than Ingram. Doesn't play quite as many minutes, but still averaging almost 33 minutes per game. Rebounding numbers not quite as high as you would like, but they're still there. Scoring dependent, but still does enough in the way of peripherals that it's not entirely scoring dependent. And he does have almost a 29% usage rate this year. So Zion, a little bit cheaper than Ingram, also looks good. They would obviously be the first two that I'm going to here, but I don't think either one is likely to be amongst my highest owned players just because there are guys I like a little bit more at their respective positions.
Coach S is back in chat with a super chat. Thank you, Coach. And another big win. He says, gents, you guys are two of the best. First big hit of the year, 100,000 yesterday. Thanks for your help, Coach S 111. Yeah, congrats, man. That's fantastic. And I love seeing viewers have huge wins and come in and celebrate with all of us here. So congrats, man. And thank you for supporting the channel and all of us. Guys, hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so. And, of course, subscribe to the channel. I know we got cut off earlier, but appreciate your patience as we got back online here. All right, so how else do you want to tackle New Orleans? Is there anyone that you look at and you say, I guess I could give you this first, Adam. The ownership right now on the New Orleans Pelicans is not crazy. You have, let's see, none of them. 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, Zion is 9th, but that's the only New Orleans Pelican in the top 10. And a matter of fact, I don't think you have more than 2 of them in the top 20 in ownership on a 3-gamer. So maybe you have Ingram and Adams all the way down there at the end of 20, but you don't have 2 in the top 15. That says a lot about them tonight.
Yeah, and that's how I view them. There's probably going to be someone on this team that has a good game. It's just that they're not the top plays at their positions or price points, and so that's why you see the low ownership there. But you still get that high ceiling from Ingram. You get it from Zion. But even looking at the guards, I had mentioned earlier when we talked about Jrue Holiday that I felt kind of similarly about Lonzo Ball and Eric Bledsoe as I do about Holiday. Their roles on this team forces them into being not great fantasy options because Bledsoe's not scoring to his full ability. He's losing rebounds. Same goes for Lonzo, who's only got about a 6.7% rebounding rate this year. They're losing rebounds to Adams and to Zion and to a lesser extent to Ingram. Josh Hart's a good rebounder as well, so he's taking stuff away from Bledsoe and Lonzo. Ingram getting all these assists is knocking down the assist numbers for Lonzo and for Bledsoe. So on average, they're not really very appealing options, but that drives their salaries down and it drives their ownership down at the same time, just based on talent and the fact that Bledsoe can score, Lonzo can rebound, Lonzo can get assists. The ceiling, the gap between the ceiling and the average projection for these guys is bigger than it is for a lot of players, just because they have the talent any given night to go out there and have a big game, even though normally that's not going to happen. So at low ownership on a 3-game slate, I don't think it's a very good spot. I don't think they're great plays, but I do think that their ability to have big games makes them appealing tournament options solely because of the ownership and just the talent that they have.
All right. Let's close it out with the Utah Jazz. They are at home 7-point favorites, 111.75 implied total for them. Donovan Mitchell, pretty popular today, getting around to, 24% projected ownership. In the boom bust tool, he's up there pretty high towards the top. He also has a pretty high bust rating, though, Adam. You can check that tool out, guys, if you haven't done so. It's pretty awesome. Got a lot of questions on how to use it. Literally just read everything at the top and Adam's companion piece that tells you how to do it. It's an amazing tool. It's telling you the probability of them achieving 75th percentile performance to ceiling or busting, which is 25th percentile. Actually, boom percentage is the 5x plus 10, which is why Adam mentioned that earlier in the show. And it's really awesome. I think you will appreciate that, the ownership projections, the top stack tool, and everything at Awesemo. Go to awesemo.com/join. All of these tools built by Awesemo himself, Alex Baker, #1 ranked DFS player. And if you're a UFC fan, for $2.57, use that promo code Connor, CONOR, and get a $2.57 Awesemo Plus UFC weekly pass. Talk to me about the Jazz here, starting with Mitchell and Gobert.
Yeah, I think Mitchell and Gobert are the two that are underpriced here. You're getting ownership, like you said, and I think it's for good reason. It's not the best matchup, but it's not a terrible matchup either. And Mitchell, he's averaging about 34 minutes per game this year. If this game's competitive, he should play a little bit more. Usage rate's up around 32%, assist percentage 25%. He's averaging about a little over 1.1 fantasy points per minute, but he started off this year really slowly. Like, if you remember, he was down into the mid 6K range briefly on DraftKings because he was shooting so poorly. He's still a little bit below his career true shooting percentage, but he's getting back close to it. Point being that, he's still a good player. He's still a really high upside guy, and I think he's still a little bit underpriced. Gobert, sort of the same thing, opposite direction of Mitchell. Gobert started this year off really, really well, rebounding at a higher rate than was sustainable, scoring at a higher rate than was sustainable. But his salary really never jumped. Like, we never got Gobert's salary going up the way Mitchell's went down. So now, even as Gobert comes back towards his career averages, he's still priced for them. So there is still some value here. He's only averaged 30 minutes per game this year. That's a little concerning. In a competitive game, you could probably get a couple more minutes, but even last game against New Orleans, which this is a game where my thought going into their last meeting was that both Gobert and Steven Adams could play more minutes than normal to deal with each other. We actually saw Gobert only play about 15 first half minutes. We saw Adams not even in the closing lineup, really, with Zion at center. So it didn't go the way that I expected, but you still can get low 30s in minutes from Gobert. He was averaging 1.2 DraftKings points per minute this year. So Mitchell and Gobert, I think, both look underpriced. And then you kind of get into guys that look similar to the players on Utah or on New Orleans, where Mike Conley, Jordan Clarkson, Bojan Bogdanovic, they're all priced about where they should be as far as their median projection being around 5 times their salary, but they all have upside as well, and they also all have downside. Conley only playing around 30 minutes per game has for the season, has actually only topped 30 minutes once in his last 10 games on New Year's Day, actually. So that's a problem there, but Utah's also been in their share of blowouts. If this game's competitive, I expect you to get around 30 minutes from Conley, who's averaging over 1.1 fantasy points per minute. Jordan Clarkson played almost 30 minutes last game despite Joe Ingles coming back. I didn't expect that to happen, but he has been playing well. And if that continues, then he does still have upside at 6,100. The guy that I really like, though, as far as value here, is Bojan Bogdanovic. He's shot absolutely awful this year compared to his career averages, but you're seeing that start to turn around and his true shooting percentage start to creep up as you would expect. This is also a New Orleans team, though, that's allowed the second most three-point attempts per game this year. Bogdanovich is fourth on the team in three-point attempts, but he averages over 6 per game. He leads the team in spot-up chances per game. The Pelicans have allowed, I think, the third most in the league. And it just sets up as a spot where Bogdanovich could get a few extra shots, and he's priced basically to his floor. So I do like him as a value on this slate.
Yeah, let's just hope he doesn't go for 2 points again. But yeah, I'm with you. When the price comes down like that, and I was actually just looking at his true shooting before you started talking about him. It's actually not as bad as I thought it would be. It's 54.3% compared to 56.5 last year, but that was a career high. His average is 54.9. So like, it's not that far off from his career average at all. Adam, we'll close this out with 2 questions, actually 1 comment and a question, which are both super chats. And then Josh Engleman and Greg Ehrenberg are taking you up to lock. And then 30 minutes past it, talking Jock Market with all of you who want to stick around. Kane Smith says, thoughts on Burks? Does he take away from Quickly or Barrett? Just really quickly, because we answered this already.
He could take away from Quickly. My best guess is that he takes away from Bullock and that Peyton and Quickly still play 48 minutes.
Yep, that was my thinking too. I would assume a young team would want to get Quickly more minutes instead of Bullock, but who knows? Thibodeau has a mind of his own.
You assume they want to get Quickly more minutes than Peyton too.
Right, exactly. I got a Manning with another super chat. It says, appreciate the analysis and your time. Thanks as always. Thanks as always to you, man. You're always here helping us out and supporting us. We'll see you guys back here very soon tomorrow on the Deeper Dive. Don't go anywhere. Live before lock, this very same stream coming up right now.
Alrighty, well then I'm just going to start talking, I guess, because I'm guessing I am on the screen now. And if not, well, I'll get there eventually. Welcome everybody to NBA Live Before Lock. It is Thursday, January 21st. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Greg Ehrenberg. We're here to break down this illustrious 3-game slate, but we are really kicking it off with a fantastic basketball game. I am excited for that. Greg, I haven't seen you in a while. How are you doing?
Yeah, it's been a minute. I think you were helping somebody move. There was a day where we were separated, and then I took your spot on another show, so I got to host a show with Alex, which I think went relatively well. I agree with you. I'm excited for Lakers Bucks. I'm less excited for the nightcap of Knicks Warriors. But overall, I think that there are some interesting spots to talk about in this slate overall, just because there is no real value. So I'm curious to see where you ended up going on the slate, because it's a tough one to figure out.
It really is. You nailed that exactly. My former college roommate moved in with my wife and I for the next couple months, going to be moving down to the Wilmington area. So we're his intermediary stop. So that's kind of exciting. Yeah, I was happy to dive in. I took a couple of days of a little bit less going on, and now I'm back and better than ever. I actually played last night's slate, took a full beating. That was a great time. So it can't really get much worse than it did yesterday. I think we could dive right in. So first and foremost, hit that like button. You guys know the drill. We're on a new link, so I need to run this like number up a little bit. Hit that thumbs up. Helps us out a ton. Let's try to get to 50,000 subscribers before we get to the Super Bowl. That would also be helpful. So subscribe to the channel. And shout out to the sponsor of this program, Jock Market. I'm going to touch on Jock Market a little bit later. And we are going to stick around a little bit later. 30 minutes of Jock Market coverage coming up after lock. So from 7:30 to, 7:55, Greg and I are going to break down our thoughts on Jock Market. I've got some open IPOs right now. I'm excited to see where we end up there. We'll touch on it all in a little bit, but let's start here. Ooh, Orton's neckbeard. Super chat right out of the gate. If you keep the money hat off my screen, I have another crisp 5 for you tomorrow. Honestly, I wish that I could. It's not something that I can control. There's a decent chance that Spags wears every single money hat he owns on Sunday. So we'll see where we end up.
Yeah, I mean, just be thankful he's not wearing the money underwear on the screen, because he showed me that after the show ends. And yeah, just be grateful he got the money hat.
Money thong time?
Oh, if only.
If only is right. Lakers and Bucks. We are in Milwaukee for this one. Haven't really got your thoughts, right? You haven't been on anything for today, correct?
Nope, I have not. So fresh thoughts here.
Yeah, nothing much has changed for me from a Lakers and Milwaukee perspective, so we can dive in now. And I'm going to say we'll open it up to this entire game. Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Giannis Antetokounmpo, clearly 3 of the top, 4 players on the slate, depending on how you want to bucket these guys. How are you feeling about them? FanDuel thoughts, DraftKings thoughts, floor is yours.
All right, so the guy I have the most exposure to as a pay-up option on both FanDuel and DraftKings is LeBron James today. And one of the reasons is just salary relief. So for a really long time, I was not really on the Lakers guys this season. And the reason was just because we have Montrezl Harrell, we have Dennis Schroeder in the mix. And that's led to a couple of things for LeBron and AD. Number one, less usage has been needed for them. Their usage rates are down from last year. The other thing also is with the Lakers just kind of smashing a lot of teams this season, we've seen minutes down for LeBron and AD. They haven't need to extend them as much. But we saw last game when the Lakers played in a more competitive game against the Warriors, LeBron's minutes were back up to a more reasonable rate. He played 38 minutes after about 2 weeks where he played 27 to 30 minutes every game. So look at this game against the Bucks, and I think that we should see LeBron play a full allotment of minutes, which isn't something we've seen all this year. And when you consider also that his price is down sub 10K on both FanDuel and DK, I think that it makes a lot of sense to get to him, especially when you consider that on the slate, there's a real lack of value, and that makes it a little bit harder to get all the way up to somebody like Giannis as compared to LeBron, just because of the salary savings.
So LeBron would have been my guy that I have the most exposure to. Now, as we're getting closer to lock, I'm pretty much neutral on all 3 of them. And again, I'm just playing on FanDuel. So LeBron is alone at small forward, Giannis and AD grouped together at power forward. I have them all somewhere in the 35 to 40% range. And that's sort of just where the field is too. I think it's easier to get different elsewhere. And I didn't have like a particular feel on any one of those guys. Honestly, the guy that I'm not paying up for the most is Steph. I have a little bit less Steph than the public, more of I guess AD over the field, but ultimately all three guys, 35, 40%. Can't really ignore any of them.
I'm in the same boat.
I did not hear if you distinguish between FanDuel and DraftKings there. Was that similar?
I said both. He's my LeBron's my highest pay up option on both slates, on both sites. And then I agree with you on Steph. He's the guy of the high end that I have the least exposure to. And number one, point guard. I don't want to say there's value at point guard on FanDuel. However, there's more value relative to other positions. So down at point guard, like I think that Lonzo Ball, Alfred Payton, and Eric Bledsoe are all reasonable value plays relative to their price. I'm a little uncertain with the minutes in New Orleans and what's going to go on there, but I think for the price tag that Lonzo Ball has and what his current ownership is, he makes for a good GPP play just because let's say the minutes do come up. We don't have a hard number for his playing time right now.
Right.
But let's say that I think there's a wide range of outcomes there. I think he could play anywhere from like 23 to 32 minutes today. If he plays on the upper end, then he's the best point guard play for his price. And just given that it's a 3-game slate, he doesn't have much ownership. I like him in tournaments.
I like that call. We got a ton of super chats in the time that you have been talking about pay up options for Lakers Giannis. So one is just sup fellas is from William Fields. Minimum price DJ Augustine, high overall total. Thoughts?
So I assume he means for DraftKings, correct?
He's the flat min on FanDuel as well. He ranks as my 8th best point guard, which is also sort of where he is in the ownership. If you want to pay all the way down, sure. I don't really have a strong lean on FanDuel. He's not viable, which I think is probably the best way to describe it.
I didn't roster him on FanDuel. I rostered him a little bit on DraftKings. I think that the difference between somebody being 3,000 and 3,500 for the min price, that makes a decent amount of difference there. In terms of fantasy, like projection for DJ Augustine, I don't have him projected to be a great value. And the other thing also, like I said on FanDuel, there are point guard options for cheap that I think are viable. Lonzo, Alfred Payton, Eric Bledsoe, like I mentioned. Eric Bledsoe's 4,700. I know nobody likes him, and I've had very mixed results rostering this year, but he's only $1,200 more expensive than DJ Augustine. That's not that much of a gap when you consider the difference in production, projection, playing time. Everything favors Eric Bledsoe. I know nobody wants to hear me talk about Eric Bledsoe again this year, but do you really want to just save $1,200 for DJ Augustine over Eric Bledsoe?
I certainly don't. I have a ton of Eric Bledsoe.
Yeah, I do too. This is an Eric Bledsoe slate for me, which maybe that isn't all that weird, but right before we went live and we're trying to figure out like you asked me, what weird things do you have in your lineups? I was going to bring up that Eric Bledsoe being one of my highest owned players on the slate. Maybe that's not really that weird, at least for FanDuel, he's one of my highest owned players. DraftKings is a little bit different. I don't know if that really qualifies as weird. Number one, I've rostered a lot of Eric Bledsoe this year overall. But then number two, I think he's pretty clearly the best point guard option from a points per dollar perspective.
Okay, so my question to you is this. I just need to get into Bledsoe now, and then I'll keep hitting on some of these super chats. What's the first digit of your exposure?
I'll just give out the number. And by the way, this is a number that could change as we go along, but I have 69% right now.
I wish you could see my screen.
Is it so you're above that number?
68.7.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, we're right in the same neighborhood. And I even like decreased him a little bit, but it doesn't, there's no way to look at that price tag and really reasonably say that he's not a great value play, right? Like, I mean, I understand, like I said, there's bias against Eric Bledsoe. People don't like him. He's generally underperformed this year versus what we'd expect. But even if you get 20 fantasy points, if you were to put Eric Bledsoe's projection at 20 fantasy points, he's still going to be one of the best point guard options on the slate. There's no way you could nerf it enough that he just doesn't come out well.
I 100% agree with you, and that's why I have essentially the exact same amount of Eric Bledsoe right now, and we didn't know that as we were about to talk about it. Josh Benjamin with two separate super chats, one that says, I just want to do it, and then the other one is blank, so thank you very much for that one.
Are we supposed to fill in the blank?
I have no idea.
All right.
No, it's not, he didn't say blank. It is just a non-message.
I thought it was a Mad Lib.
Raman Yosin. I don't know if that's a soft J, if we're going yogging later. Josh Angie, keep swagging. I don't know. I have never had a single lick of swag in my entire life, but I will keep swagging. And then Joe Sherman, thoughts on Randall as a pivot off of LeBron. So I assume that's a DraftKings question.
All right. So for what it's worth, he is, I'm getting to him over the field on FanDuel and on DraftKings. I'm also over the field on him. So I don't necessarily say I like him as a pivot to LeBron. I like LeBron and Randall, and playing them together is fine. I think with Randall on both sides, he's a little bit underpriced just when you consider what his role has been with Tom Thibodeau as the coach. Like, he's playing Randall upwards of 40 minutes every game, unless it's either a total blowout, which Thibodeau still runs his guys out throughout the fourth quarter and blowout sometimes. I mean, if it has to be the Knicks have to be down like 30 in the fourth quarter for him not to do that. Or if he gets into foul trouble. Outside of that, Randall's playing all the minutes he could handle. And then you just go look at his price compared to his recent results. I mean, he scored at least 45 fantasy points in like 8 of his last 9 games. So you consider a sub 9K price tag. I think that the price is just a little bit wrong there. It seems ridiculous that Julius Randle is about the same price as LeBron James, but you look at the production this year, and it makes sense because Randle's playing almost 10 more minutes per game compared to LeBron, and that makes a big difference.
Makes a gigantic difference. I think we can now circle back to the rest of Lakers Bucks. We worked our way through those super chats. So we touched on the top flight guys. Who are some other guys picking up some of your exposure from this Lakers Milwaukee game? Plenty of different options. I know I'm getting a lot of Dante DiVincenzo on FanDuel, which was not really like the most fun thing in the world, but it's happening anyway. What are your thoughts on the rest of LA and Milwaukee?
All right. So Dante DiVincenzo on FanDuel for sure. I mean, it's just a price play. You look at the shooting guard options, and they're really weak on FanDuel. Donovan Mitchell is a pretty obvious play on the high end. I'm overweight to the field on him. I'm overweight to the field on Dante DiVincenzo. I have some exposure to Reggie Bullock as well. But the shooting guard option, I mean, you get beyond that. There's Andrew Wiggins. There's Jordan Clarkson, who I still think is a little overpriced. And I've been wrong on him. I have to keep mentioning that I'm always wrong on Jordan Clarkson. It doesn't change because he keeps having big games, and I continue to be wrong. I thought last game with Joe Ingles coming back, we were going to see a hit to Jordan Clarkson's minutes. Instead, Joe Ingles only played 19 minutes. I still have Clarkson playing a little bit less minutes today, and Joe Ingles seeing a slight increase in minutes. And it's enough to make Jordan Clarkson not a good play for me at 6,300 on FanDuel. And I also think he's overpriced on DraftKings. I don't have 0% Jordan Clarkson, but I have less than the field. So Dante DiVincenzo, just his price point at 4,400, that makes him somebody that I'm getting to a lot. I have exposure to Chris Middleton on DraftKings. I have Middleton and Portis would be 2 other guys that I'm getting to at a decent amount. So Bobby Portis on DraftKings, at least, where his price point is, 4,300? Yeah, 4,300 for Portis. Yeah. It's not that I expect him to play a massive amount of minutes, but he's such a good points per minute fantasy producer, and he could score so quickly that on a slate that lacks value, he's somebody that I think is one of the only viable salary saving options with some upside on DK.
You basically laid out everything. I mean, you and I are in lockstep. I have a very, very minimal amount of Jordan Clarkson at 6,300 on FanDuel. It just doesn't feel like a price tag that is working. Unfortunately for me, I have a little bit more Andrew Wiggins, also not a really desirable outcome at all. Is there anything from the LA-Milwaukee game that you think is sort of off the beaten path that you'd be okay with in a large field GPP?
Let me just go through my exposure, see if there's anything really crazy I got. The other thing too is I don't really think there's too many off the wall plays today, unless you're just going to some min price guy that the field isn't getting to. There's 3 games, basically everybody's own. There aren't that many guys you could find who it's like, oh, this guy's only 5% owned. If he's 5% owned, it's probably because he sucks as a play. So there really aren't that many off the wall plays that I think are sensible. All right. Well, Josh just died, so I don't know if Josh has some really off the wall pick or something, but he just had to mute himself and started coughing, and I think his lung came out. So let's see if he's back now.
I think that I'm back. I can still feel it in my throat. So once I clear this, not what's in my throat, but whatever this feeling is, I'll kick it back to you. Actually, I'm going to cough again.
Okay. Well, I'm running the show solo for now. Let me see if there's anybody else who I actually got to at a decent amount outside of those players I mentioned.
I'm in shambles, man.
It's no good over there.
No, I'm good. I'm good. Go ahead. Who do you got?
I'm just checking to see if there's anybody else that I didn't mention. One guy who I'm underweight to the field on is still Drew Holiday. I've not rostered Drew Holiday with any consistency this year. I think there was one slate against the Bulls where he was like 6,100 or something where I got to him. Outside of that, I have not gotten to Drew Holiday very much. His usage is down in a pretty big way, playing in Milwaukee alongside Chris Middleton, and Giannis. His usage rate is down this year. He's had a usage over 20% twice the entire season. And that was a game against the Mavericks, and it was 20.4%. And the game against the Cavs at 20.1%. So overall, the usage hit that Drew Holiday is taking, playing alongside Giannis and Middleton, has made it to a point where it's really hard to roster him. His price has just not gone down to really reflect that. He's stayed around the same price all season.
I have him as my third ranked shooting or point guard rather on FanDuel. I am a little bit under the field as of right now, which I'm actually, now that I'm looking at it, probably going to try to adjust, but I'm assuming we get one more ownership update and I can make that tweak. But it's not like a guy that I'm trying to get a lot of. That's Peyton and Bledsoe at the point guard spot. We got another super chat. Hart, a pivot off of DiVincenzo, similar production at lower price and lower ownership. I would just rather have DiVincenzo.
They play different positions though.
I assume it's a DraftKings question.
Well, on DraftKings, I don't think DiVincenzo is nearly as strong of a play. So to reiterate, when we were talking about DiVincenzo before, that was FanDuel specific that I'm getting to a lot of DiVincenzo. On DraftKings,
I still think he's a much better play than Josh Hart on DraftKings.
Yeah, so I have 0% Josh Hart on DraftKings, and I don't have a ton of DiVincenzo on DraftKings. I do on FanDuel, but I have him in some lineups, and I don't have Josh Hart in any lineups on DraftKings. So yeah, that's where I lie.
Couple more super chats from William Fields. Greg G, tan in mid-January. Nice. So congrats on that one.
I'm definitely not tan, by the way. I am as white can be.
There you go. And then Orton's Neckbeard said, when you get that good hit and you have to switch from automatic breathing to manual. It's pretty spot on.
Yeah, Josh is literally at the point where he's just sitting there. He goes, all right, breathe. Like he actually has to, he's forgotten to breathe. It is one of those things where you get into that mindset sometimes where it's like, oh, wait, breathe. And then once you say in your head, it's like, oh my God, if I don't think to do this, I stop doing it.
You're breathing like someone in space. You're just like, you're eating air. Like you could feel it's going to it's not important. Anyway, guys, now we've worked our way through the first game sort of, or at least the best that we could. We need to talk a little bit about Jock Market. They're turning sports into a stock exchange. So instead of having to worry about just your normal fantasy point projections and adding that all up, it's all about the rank and what you buy these individual players for on a share by share basis. And you can do that during games. You can buy and sell the players you have during games. It's super fun. I'm really enjoying it. I've got bids in right now. So when we hit lock, we'll be able to talk a little bit further about the guys that I am on for Jock Market. You can do this for NBA, NFL, PGA. Basically, there's a pre-slate IPO pickup where you're trying to gain shares of everybody. Then the market opens at lock, and then buying and selling is fluid. If somebody has like a really good first quarter, they're going to probably have a bump. It's going to be a little bit more expensive to get those guys. If they're having sort of a crappy first rotation, you might be able to pick up a couple of extra shares at a discount if you think these guys can rebound. Greg and I are going to be here after the show from 7:30 until 7:55, breaking down everything for Jock Market, keeping an eye on the Lakers-Milwaukee game to see how LeBron's price and AD's price and Giannis's price are all fluctuating. You guys can sign up at Jock Market. Download the app. It's just an app on your phone. Download the app. Use the promo code Awesemo20. Get a $20 bonus on your first deposit. It's a good time to sign up, guys. Check out Jock Market. And I have one other thing. We have an active promo going on. Use the promo code Connor, CONOR, because we probably should have went with McGregor on that one based on the way that he spells his first name. But that's neither here nor there. You can get an MMA weekly pass for $2.57 in advance of UFC 254 this Saturday, where Conor McGregor makes his return after a year out, taking on Dustin Poirier for the second time, where he will turn his lights off for the second time. At least I hope so. You can get the Top Fighters tool, UFC Pro Plays, additional content from Pete the Heat Rogers on the back end, putting out tons of stuff lately. It's good stuff. I love it. And those guys are coming up immediately after this 8 p.m. MMA strategy show, breaking it all down. So use that promo code Connor. It's good all the way up until Saturday if you want to get in and get our MMA weekly pass. Let's move on to the New York Knicks and the Golden State Warriors. Knicks, a couple point underdogs in Golden State. I find this game to be fascinating. We've got RJ Barrett, Julius Randle, Mitchell Robinson, Elfrid Payton. These guys are soaking up quite a bit of exposure, at least for me right now. So let's start on the Knicks side. What do you like? What do you not like?
All right. So at least on FanDuel, and this is somebody also, there's a big difference on Elfrid Payton between FanDuel and DraftKings. So on DraftKings, I have some exposure to him. It's minimal, though. I have a lot of exposure to Elfrid Payton on FanDuel for a couple of reasons. Number one, there aren't that many point guard options on FanDuel. We have to roster 2 of them. Also, he's $600 cheaper on FanDuel than he is on DK. And because of his defensive stats, he generally profiles a little bit better as a FanDuel play than a DK play. Now, with that said, I'm a little concerned about the amount of ownership I have to him, just because Alec Burks is back in action for the first time in a while. Emmanuel Quickley has played really well as of lately. So I'm a little concerned that we're going to see potentially Burks close the game. We're going to see Quickley play extended minutes, and that could pinch Payton a little bit. I have Payton is my second highest owned point guard behind Eric Bledsoe. But I'd say that my exposure to Elfrid Payton is probably what I feel least confident in my lineups right now, at least for FanDuel purposes.
So Payton and Bledsoe, top 2 for you. We are in the same exact boat, which is a place that I'm perfectly happy to be. I'll be honest with you. I like it. I like the distinction between FanDuel and DraftKings. I have a bunch of this Knicks team, at least as of right now, and I don't really get the sense that that's going to be changing anytime soon. The Knicks are the most exposed team for me on FanDuel, and it's not particularly close. I have a ton of Elfrid Payton. I have a ton of RJ Barrett, lots of Julius Randle. Reggie Bullock, I don't love having, but that's happening. I like Mitchell Robinson at 5,600. I'm still getting to Quickley at 4,500. The one guy that I'm not getting to, the guy that we should probably talk about, and I think it's very much not all that interesting on FanDuel. Do you have any interest in Alec Burks? If he plays 30 minutes like he was, that's a good Alec Burks. I have no idea what he's going to do today.
Yeah, I have some exposure to Alec Burks on both FanDuel and DraftKings. I tried to limit the amount of lineups I have with Burks and Payton together because I think there's a little bit of a negative correlation there. Like I said before, I think one of the ways that Elfrid Payton fails on this slate is if we just see him not close the game, potentially Alec Burks closes, because that's something we saw happen at the beginning of the year. The difference here, obviously, is that Burks has not played in a long time, and we have no clue what's going to happen. But we've seen Thibodeau is so aggressive with the minutes he gives to guys. Who knows? We might see Burks play well and just be like, Alec Burks, you're playing 35 minutes tonight, because Tom Thibodeau is just crazy and does not really seem to care about the well-being of his players over the long haul, which is also why a lot of his young players have been on his teams. Jimmy Butler, long injury history. Zach LaVine tore his ACL. Derrick Rose obviously tore his ACL. These guys were all coached by Tom Thibodeau when they were young players, and I don't think it's a coincidence. So with all that in mind, I think it's very possible that Alec Burks plays well and just gets extended minutes. So I think that, once again, he's a high variance play, not somebody I'd play in cash games. But for GPPs, yeah, I'm interested in him just because I think there is the upside there if Thibodeau decides that he's going to give him the extended minutes. That, and he's low owned. You don't have to roster him all that much to be overweight to the field on him. If you put Burks in 15% of your lineups, which is about what I have, you have more exposure to him than the field does.
I don't have any. So this is the first time that we are actually going to have a little bit of differentiation between each other. I'm just a little nervous about his minutes. I don't really trust it. And it felt pretty easy to get away from today at the shooting guard spot. Anything else you want to touch on from the Knicks?
Yeah, so Quickley, I like a lot as a value play on DraftKings. FanDuel, not quite as much. I think I don't have an issue if anybody rosters him. I have some exposure to him, but not a significant amount. On DraftKings, I like him a decent amount at his price point of, what was it, $4,100 if I remember off the top of my head. Yeah, $4,100. So he's a few $100s cheaper than he is on FanDuel. And the reason being is just the usage for Quickley has been ridiculous. And that he's also playing really well. So look at the usage from the last 4 games, over 30% in all of those games. He comes off the bench, he shoots, he scores. I mean, that's what Quickley does. He comes in and he's looking to take shots in a hurry. He's kind of like Jordan Clarkson, but probably better than Jordan Clarkson if we're being realistic. Like, Quickley, I think, is the best draft pick the Knicks have made in a long time. And I think that if you look at anybody who gets picked kind of like the mid to late first round as an athletic guard that we've seen from Kentucky, it's been a consistent trend over the last few years. Those guys from Kentucky are getting underdrafted pretty consistently. And Quickley looks like the latest guy who falls into that mold. Comes on the court, like I said, not afraid to shoot. I, once again, have very minimal confidence in his minutes with Alec Burks back in the mix. But another guy that I think makes sense for GPPs just because the variance is there. one of these guys between Alfred Payton, Alec Burks, and Quickly, one of them is going to have a very big game. I have very little doubt about that. I think it's going to be Payton. That's why I have the most exposure to him. But I also have exposure to Burks and Quickly just because it's very hard to nail down the minutes and say, like, yes, I'm confident this is what it's going to be. Because I don't think Tom Thibodeau knows. I think he's going to play it by ear, and whichever guy is running hot, that's who he's going to roll with today.
All right. So on the Golden State side, it's basically just like Curry and the Warriors, I guess. There's probably a better name for it. I'm relatively light on Curry today. I have a pretty key reason for that. And then, it's Oubre, Wiggins, Draymond, Wiseman. Like, none of these guys are standout performers. They all have warts in some way. You guys know what you're getting at Andrew Wiggins. Kelly Oubre was 0 for the century to start off the season. Wiseman, a rookie. So I am pretty underexposed to the Warriors. They are my second lowest exposure on the slate of the 6 teams. The big reason for that is the pace of this game. And I think it's kind of being overlooked a little bit in some of the things I've seen today. The Golden State Warriors have the 4th highest pace in my pace metrics for this season, basically tied at the top. The New York Knicks are the slowest team in basketball by a full 2 possessions below the Clippers for me. There's a difference between the Warriors' pace and the Knicks' pace of 8 game possessions. So this is a pace up spot for the Knicks, and as dramatic of a pace down spot as the Golden State Warriors can have. That's really discounting my projections on all of these guys. So that is why I am ultimately pretty light on Golden State. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the Warriors.
All right, so I'm underweight to the field on Steph Curry. I think of the pay-up options on the slate, he is the weakest between him, LeBron, Anthony Davis, Giannis. I have the least amount of exposure to Steph Curry. It doesn't mean I have 0%, but I have less in the field. I like those other guys more. Like you said, I think the pace of play is a little bit of a concern. Tom Thibodeau, I mean, you talk about a coach who has not changed at all since he first broke into the league. He's playing all his guys 40 minutes per game, doesn't believe in any of rest, doesn't believe in any of the changes in pace or anything like that. He coaches the NBA exactly like he coached it when he first started 15 years ago, whenever it was. And it shows up a little bit in DFS, and it impacts a lot of Knicks games in both positive and negative ways, because we could count on Knicks players to play upwards of 40 minutes. And then we could also expect those games to generally be really slow pace. So from that standpoint, that's really why I don't like Steph Curry as much as the other players. Basically exactly what you said, the pace of play. The guys I do like, though, I like Oubre. I have over the field exposure to him on both FanDuel and DraftKings. One thing that's encouraging about Oubre, at least in the last couple of games, he's closing games again for Golden State. And if you look at what was happening with him a couple of weeks ago, he was struggling so much from the field and so much with his shot that they were starting to pinch his minutes. They were starting to come down. He wasn't in the closing unit anymore. He is back closing games for them in the last couple, and that's why we've seen his minutes go from being in the mid to low 20s to now being somebody who in the last 2 games played 31 and 37 minutes and with much better production. So I think that Kelly Oubre is back on the upswing now. So I think that he's somebody who kind of a last chance to buy low on. And then I like James Wiseman. I think particularly on both sides, I'm overweight to the field on him. On DraftKings, there's just not a whole lot of value options. Mentioned that a few times. James Wiseman, he's shown to be a good points per minute producer this year. The biggest issue with him is fouls. Last 4 games, 4 fouls, 5 fouls, 4 fouls, 5 fouls. But it does seem that when he's able to avoid foul trouble, there's more of an effort to get him extended minutes now. So like last game, even with him getting into foul trouble, he still ended up playing 25 minutes, ended up scoring over 30 fantasy points. So he's a good point per minute fantasy producer. There is the potential for him there. He's one of the only cheap guys I see with having legitimate upside. So Wiseman, I like him. I like Oubre. And those are really my 2 main plays from the Warriors.
I'm with you on Oubre. I have quite a bit. I only have exposure to 5 small forwards on FanDuel. He is my 5th of 5, but I'm still over the field. So I'm pretty concentrated there. LeBron, Middleton, Barrett, Ingram, Oubre. I'm fully just grabbing all the goods there. No real pay down options as far as I'm concerned. Or at least I hope that shakes out. Do you have anything else you want to touch on from Golden State? We've got about 23 minutes before lock.
What did you do with Draymond Green today? I know he was somebody that you liked a little bit a couple of weeks ago. I've been on him for a while too. I still have some exposure to him, not quite in the same way it was a couple of weeks ago. I think both of us were in agreement where it's like, hey, look how cheap Draymond Green is. Draymond Green shouldn't be that cheap with nobody rostering him. Obviously now it's a 3-game slate, so he's picking up some exposure. But I keep thinking that Draymond Green's going to pick up his production, especially on a team that's so devoid of talent compared to previous Golden State teams. And it just hasn't happened for Draymond. The minutes aren't really there for him. It looks like he's probably a little bit past his prime. The defensive numbers aren't really there for him anymore. So I'm getting to him a little bit, but I mean, earlier in the day when I looked at this later, it's like, oh, there's not a lot of value, but Draymond Green's priced in the mid 5K range. I assume I'm going to get to a ton of them. And then once I started running lineups, I got to him a little bit, but not nearly at the rate I was expecting to. So what do you make of Draymond and his start so far?
So I actually have a little bit more than I was expecting. And I think it's basically just a price point. I don't like anybody below 5,400 more than I like Draymond. So he's just sort of scooping up ownership that I didn't expect him to get. Like, I'd rather have Draymond than Kuzma because I think he's just going to play more. Or Eric Paschall, like I can't take Eric Paschall before I take Draymond in this spot. The only other guy that I think is viable in this one would be Royce O'Neal, but at 5K, I think I would just rather have Draymond than Royce O'Neal for a Jazz team that's full strength. Portis, I guess, but again, like I don't really expect him to play a ton. Do you like anybody below Draymond's price on FanDuel?
No, the only power forwards I rostered on FanDuel are Giannis, AD, Randall, Zion, and Draymond Green. Draymond's the cheapest. So there are some other places where I had some weird plays, like I mentioned before. Somebody like Alec Burks is kind of off the board. I just went with the chalk at power forward. I think it's very hard to differentiate yourself and be reasonable at FanDuel power forward.
Yeah, we're in basically the same. I have a little bit of Kuzma and Paschall. The Paschall thought, just in case like something happens to Draymond, that could be the swing spot. But I don't have really any exposure elsewhere. So Draymond's sort of like my power forward floor. Otherwise, I'm paying up. LeBron and AD are the normal starters for that game, so I don't have anything really else to add there.
Well, it's cool that LeBron. It's cool that LeBron's in because you did say before the show, it's like something weird's going to happen. Or LeBron and AD get ruled out or something like that. So at least we didn't find that. It's going to happen eventually. The list is questionable every single slate. You have to think there's going to be a time they're going to rule them out.
Well, if it happens, I hope it happens on a day where I am not on Live Before Lock. But on the days that I am on Live Before Lock, you guys should hit that thumbs up. 543 likes right now. Well, let's run that number up. 600, 700, wherever you guys want it to land. That's where I want it to land too. But as long as we agree that it should be a really high number. And also, we're doing a giveaway today. Head to our Twitter account, Awesemo_com. You can win an annual pass of Awesemo NBA. That's a $400 value. And all you have to do is guess who scores more points, LeBron or Giannis. There are instructions in the tweet. Follow them. It's not complicated. You just follow a couple Twitter accounts like this tweet. Follow Greg and I as well when you guys get the chance. And just answer the question, LeBron or Giannis, who scores more points? Random winner. Going to win an annual pass of Awesemo Plus NBA. Can't beat it, guys. It's the easiest way to do it. Costs you nothing.
Nothing at all. One game left here. And then, by the way, we covered a lot of bases on two games there. We really took our time talking about them.
Look, we're pros at this, man. That's why they pay us the big bucks.
Yeah, we know how to kill time on the air.
Absolutely. New Orleans Pelicans, Utah Jazz, 7-point favorites for the Jazz, or at least somewhere in that neighborhood from the last time that I looked at it. We'll start on the Pelican side. Clearly, you can just pay up for Ingram, pay up for Zion, or start sifting through a bunch of guys that are all like 5K, basically. So how do you feel about the pay up options for New Orleans? And then what are you doing as for the like mid-tier options coming out of the Pels?
So on DraftKings, I'll start with there. I barely got to anybody from this team. So it is, I don't think there's anybody that makes for a good play from New Orleans on DK. FanDuel, I don't know if we need to talk about Eric Bledsoe again. Both of us like him a whole lot at point guard. He's a good play there. Other guys, Ingram, I have some exposure to him, less than the field though. I mean, LeBron's 1,300 more. I'd rather get to him. I have Middleton projected for more fantasy points at $200 less. There's also added correlation in having LeBron in the same lineups with Middleton. So given how my lineup shake out, I'd rather roster Middleton over Ingram. We're comparing guys in the same price range. Other guys, I didn't get to him on DraftKings, but I did get to Zion at a decent clip on FanDuel. Not somebody who I think makes for a great points per dollar play. It's just that, hey, there aren't a lot of guys to roster at the power forward position. Zion's one of them. So I rostered 5 players, like I said before, at FanDuel, power forward. Zion is one of those guys. And then just to reiterate, DraftKings, I got to almost nobody from the Pelicans. I don't think any of them from points per dollar sense are a good play. The other guy who I almost forgot about this. What did you do with Lonzo today? I think that he's an upside play. I have no clue how many minutes he's playing.
Yeah, so I don't have much, like 7% on FanDuel. I don't know if the minutes are going to be there, and I'm like a little bit nervous about it, but I don't really know what else to do. He doesn't, this is not what I should say out loud. He doesn't feel like the guy that's going to beat me today. So there will be at least a little bit of egg on my face if that goes the wrong way.
I think
I'm playing a lot of this. I mean, he could.
What if so? All right. So here's what we know about his knees, right? First of all, I don't know what bilateral knee soreness is. He had it in both knees last game. That sounds horrifying. It seems like you're on your way to getting your legs amputated or something like that. But Lonzo Ball came back. He played 23 minutes. Supposedly had no issues. Felt fine. Looked good. And they say his minutes going forward, it's just going to be, how does he feel on the court? If he feels good, they're going to keep playing him. If he starts to feel sore or tired, they're going to take him out. Given that he played last game without any issues, got to 23 minutes, I have to at least expect that he gets more than 23 minutes. Does that mean he gets his normal 35, 36 minutes? No, I don't think that, but I think he could play upwards of 30 minutes. And if that's the case, he's grossly underpriced. So I don't have confidence in him. And by the way, I know it's a cop-out answer. I've said that with a bunch of guys. I don't feel confident in them today, but I'm overweight to the field on Zion because I think the upside's there.
So here's the easiest way for me to describe it, and I think you'll at least agree with me then. Doesn't change the exposures. I projected him for 28 minutes. So like I gave him solid run. From what I've seen in the industry, I actually have the highest projection of the other sources that I've looked at today of anybody else on Lonzo. And he ranks as my 7th best point guard. And to me, there are basically only 7 viable point guards on FanDuel. So I'm under the field at that point. And I feel pretty comfortable knowing that I gave him a projection that isn't just naturally right out of the gate lower than other spots. And I gave him a minutes projection that I think is pretty reflective for what he should do today. Now, if he comes out and plays like 33 or 34, hats off. I just don't think that they're going to run him out there like that.
No, I don't either, except he's also a guy who, at least on a points per minute basis, he's a pretty decent fantasy producer, at least on FanDuel. DraftKings is a little bit different because the difference in defensive numbers. But I mean, really quickly bringing up his FanDuel numbers this year. I mean, he's putting up 26 fantasy points per game in 32 minutes. And if you look at some of the other point guard options, so let's say that Alfred Payton or Eric Bledsoe don't have a good game. And let's say that one of the other pay-up options on other positions play well. Donovan Mitchell plays well. LeBron James plays well. Maybe Rudy Gobert or something like that. I think we're both paying up at the power forward position. So therefore, we're in general going cheaper at the point guard spot.
Yeah.
I think that under the assumption that some other pay-up options do well at other positions, and if either Alfred Payton or Eric Bledsoe fail, I think that Lonzo could definitely end up in the optimal lineup just by scoring 25 or 26 fantasy points. I think that's possible. So if he gets to the 28, 29 minutes, then I think that he has at least somewhat of a decent chance to end up being optimal. What were your actual projected odds of him and landing in the optimal lineup? And I'm going to look at the latest that Alex has from the Boom Bust tool.
I had Lonzo at 15.5%,
which is pretty much right in line with his ownership.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would like him a little bit more if there wasn't, in my opinion, so much value on Alfred Payton and Eric Bledsoe.
And by the way, per Alex's numbers, he has him with an 11% chance of being in the optimal lineup. I just think there's a lot of variance to this situation. And by the way, it's not like I'm hitching my wagon to Lonzo Ball. Yeah. I have him around 20%. But it's more so just that point guard was a position I needed to go cheap at. And I found that if I did not give myself a little bit of exposure to Lonzo Ball, I'm already uncomfortable with the amount of exposure I have to Alfred Payton and Eric Bledsoe. If I didn't get to some of Lonzo Ball, I was getting to way too much of those guys.
So I have 7% right now. I know that to me that's fine. I have a little bit more Schroeder. He's $1,100 more expensive, but I'm just really soaking up a lot of Payton and Bledsoe and hoping for the best. But I have a lot of this Pelicans team too. So I am over the field on Ingram, over the field on Zion, over the field on Steven Adams, minimal amounts of Lonzo, minimal amounts of Nickeil Alexander-Walker. It's the Utah team that I don't have. It's Donovan Mitchell and then essentially nothing else.
So, it's funny. So we've been so in line with basically all the rest of our exposure today. But for me, and by the way, DraftKings, like I said, I have almost no exposure to these guys. On FanDuel, though, I'm overweight to the field on Lonzo, and then I'm underweight to the field on Ingram and Steven Adams, and about neutral on Zion. So we're the complete opposite on the Pelicans and basically the same everywhere else.
Interesting. So where are you heavy that you're not on Ingram and Adams?
So
Wiseman?
At center, Gobert, Robinson, Wiseman. It's not that I have none of Steven Adams, but I have about 15%. So that's, relative to the field, that's not like some massive amount of difference there. But I got to other guys more than him. At small forward, like I said, I just like Middleton a lot more for $200 cheaper compared to Ingram.
Let's talk a little bit about Gobert, a center that is not making his way into many of my lineups. How are you feeling about him in this spot? We just saw it, same price, 8,500. He went for 48 2 nights ago. What are you doing with Gobert?
So on FanDuel, I found it a little difficult to get to him. He is in my player pool, though. On DraftKings, he is one of my higher owned players. So on DK, where his price point is 7,600, it is so easy to get to Gobert, and I think he makes for one of the best points per dollar plays on the slate. I have him projected for right around 40 fantasy points. Actually 7,200 on DraftKings. So at the projection I have for him and at that salary, he just rates out extremely well.
Yeah, I'm having trouble getting to any of Rudy Gobert on FanDuel. I'm now realizing that that's probably not my main goal. I would like to have at least a teensy weensy amount, which is really not easy to do. I'm jacking up projections and it's not making a change. So I'm going to just grin and bear it. When I ran the Sims, I had him less than 10%. So I feel, not that I feel comfortable, it strikes me as a really weird position because there are no other options outside of Rudy Gobert at a pay up. So he could smash and it might not even matter depending on what happens with Giannis, AD, LeBron, Steph, just because it might be easier if one of these mid 5K guys is comparable-ish from a value perspective. That's a little bit of my pause. I had him behind Mitchell Robinson, Adams, Lopez, and Wiseman in likelihood of being in the optimal from FanDuel. That's the one that makes me most nervous just because he's the only pay up option. But I don't have him separated from Mitchell Robinson by all that much from a fantasy perspective in comparison to the salary gap that they have.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's totally different though on FanDuel versus DraftKings. I know you just said you have lineups on FanDuel today, but if you were playing lineups on DK, 7,200 Gobert, I assume that you would like him a lot there because I like him a ton. I rostered him more than you did on FanDuel. It seems to have not been a hard number to be over on versus your 0%. But DraftKings 7,200, I think that he's definitely one of the best plays on the slate.
25% optimal on DraftKings, 8 on FanDuel coming out of my stuff. So we're talking a very, very dramatically different play on either site. So yeah, for people that are watching and looking for some DraftKings tidbits, it's a different story altogether. Anything else you want to touch on Pels Jazz, or give me your thoughts on the rest of the Jazz, I guess.
The Jazz. So Joe Ingles is a player who I'm going to like more than you based on what you said about the guys you have exposure to on FanDuel. I'm assuming you did not get to Joe Ingles. So Ingles, his first game back, last game from Achilles soreness, he only played 19 minutes. He played reasonably well in those 19 minutes. I feel like I got very lucky. He was one of my, he was somebody I was on for a low price point in that game. He performed well for the wrong reasons, basically. I never rostered Joe Ingles because of his points per minute production. He just happened to play very well in the 19 minutes. I think he plays more minutes today. And given how hard it is to find value at small forward on FanDuel, I think he makes sense at 4,400. On DK, I feel pretty similarly about him at 4,300. Also dual position eligibility, shooting guard, small forward. It also gives him just a whole ton of flexibility to play in the guard or forward spot. So Joe Ingles, as a guy who last I looked was not picking up all that much ownership. He is 13%. So yeah, in the teens on FanDuel and DraftKings. He's one of the contrarian plays I'm more on today.
Okay. Yeah, you were absolutely correct. I do not have him right now. Not a place that I'm going. I think that's probably it for working our way through all these games. We only have 8 minutes to go. We could take some questions. That went well. We got through 3.
We've got some questions in the Slack chat that we could read off here.
Checking out my Jock Market orders right now.
Oh, I can do that also.
Okay, so I have purchased or I've attempted to purchase shares on 2 players. Do you care to guess any of them?
Hopefully not the same guys that I put bids in on. I'm going to try to figure this out based on the other players you've liked so far today. I remember the Jock Market price was fairly high on Alfred Payton, so it's probably not him. I'm
just going to stop you right there because you were immediately incorrect. Alfred Payton is one of the Payton. 2.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So Alfred Payton's one of them. Who else did you say you liked today?
And to be fair, I don't know if I'm going to get these idiots either. So
is the other one Bledsoe then?
It's not Bledsoe. RJ Barrett.
Okay. I had a bid in on Gobert. I have no clue if I ended up getting it or not, if somebody outbid me.
I think I'm still good.
Oh, I've been outbid on Gobert since then. So
I have not been outbid.
Yeah, I was outbid on Gobert, and then I had a bid on somebody else that I also got outbid on. But all right, whatever. We got a few more minutes before we talk about that. Let's get to some of these questions.
Let's do it.
From Robashua here, he asks us, this isn't really a question. This is a kind of general statement. The only way New Orleans beats Utah is if they defend the 53-point attempts Utah takes, which they won't, or Bledsoe and Lonzo start jacking threes left and right. No, I disagree. I think that's a very specific way to look at a basketball game, and that's generally not going to be the case. There's a whole lot of ways that you could beat a team other than setting some arbitrary number of 3-pointers they have to take and make.
That's what you get for reading that question on the air before you actually read it in real life. Because I scrolled right past that bad boy. Who are the top 5K and under power forwards on FanDuel? That is from Chuck GT7.
Top small. You said top small forward options on FanDuel?
Power forward under 5K.
Oh, the answer is none. And you said it's FanDuel, right?
Yep.
Yeah, just I didn't roster anybody cheaper than Draymond Green. I think that's a miserable position to go cheap at. The pay up options are fairly strong in power forward, and the cheap guys, it's just a void. I'm trying to see if I was to get to one of them, who it would be, and even then, the answer is none of them. Maybe if you wanted to take a shot on Nerlens Noel with the potential of Mitchell Robinson getting into foul trouble, I could see the reason for that, but I didn't roster anybody below Draymond.
Yeah, I have a little bit of Kuzma, a little bit of Pascal, but Kuzma would be my answer if I had to give an answer. Not that it's a terribly fun answer, but I would go to Kuzma just because when he's on the floor, he thinks he's better than he is. And I'll take that sort of strategy all day, every day.
All right, here's a question. Is it okay to play Eric Bledsoe and Lonzo Ball together? I didn't do it a ton on FanDuel, but I did it in some lineups. Given the price point on both of them, it's so much lower than what it was to open the season where it's been at other points. 5,500 for Lonzo, 47 for Eric Bledsoe. In general, they're going to be guys who are negatively correlated. If Bledsoe plays big minutes, it's probably going to come at the expense of Lonzo and vice versa. But with that said, the price points on them are so much cheaper than they normally are. If the closing lineup is Lonzo Ball alongside Eric Bledsoe, there's a decent chance that both of them could hit value and have good games. So I don't think it's an issue to play them together on a 3-game slate.
No, I don't really think that that's an issue for really anybody today. Like Peyton and Quickly, not a combination I would like to get a lot of, but if it shows up, it's not a huge issue just because they have been playing direct backups for each other. Now it's even more complicated, but there aren't many spots like that. Like I would happily do have LeBron and AD in lineups. That's a question I got a million times today. It's not a problem at all as far as I'm concerned. We did just get another super chat. Glenn Hunt, FanDuel GPP, Randall and Ingles or Draymond and Middleton?
Can you read the combos again? It's always hard for me to keep track of them. I'm so bad at that part.
You're good. Randall and Ingles or Draymond and Middleton? I think it's easy.
Draymond and Middleton.
Yeah. Middleton's just so much better than Ingles, and Randall and Draymond are relatively close because of relative to their salaries at the very least, but just a bigger gap at the small forward spot as far as I'm concerned. 3 minutes ago, get yo lineups in, people. Thoughts on Alex Baker? He said Alex. Thoughts on Alex Baker's twin Caruso as a super cheap shooting guard for DK GPP? That's a really hard thing to say.
Let's see if I got to him at all. I think I might have 5% Caruso. Yeah, that's what I have. So Caruso, he's definitely not a priority play. Not somebody I think you need to jam into your lineups or anything like that. But comparing him to some of the other cheap guard options that are, sub 4K, I think that he's okay to roster for a 3-game slate. Like I said, I have 5% exposure to him. So I don't think he's unplayable, but not somebody that I'm going out of my way to roster either.
Can you play Burks and Quickly together in a DK GPP? Doesn't feel right, but I don't.
Yeah, I don't do that.
And again, like, it depends how many lineups you have. If you're playing 150 and you tell me that you have it 3 times, I wouldn't tell you to like freak out and go change it. If it's your only lineup today, I probably wouldn't put that construction together.
Yeah, I'm just scanning my lineup to see if I have that combination anywhere. It doesn't look like I do.
Let us see if we have anything else. 2 minutes to go. Can you pay down for both power forwards on FanDuel? I didn't pay down for one of them.
It depends what you mean. Oh, yeah. I was going to say it depends what you mean by paying down. I mean, if you're rostering, does rostering Zion and Draymond Green count as paying down? Because Zion's the second cheapest power forward I rostered on FanDuel today.
Yeah, I don't think so, unless you just mean not the 2 studs. Mitchell or Middleton? No site given.
Middleton?
I think I have to answer Mitchell, but it's ultra close.
That's such an odd question though, just because their price points are so far apart and they play different positions.
Well, they're separated by 200 on FanDuel, so maybe that's. But I don't. Then that wouldn't make any sense. So
I thought. Okay, I'm an idiot. I thought he was asking about Mitchell Robinson.
Oh yeah, that would be a way weirder question.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's why I was so confused. Let's see. Who do I have more exposure to? I have more exposure to Middleton, so my answer is Middleton.
Final question from Strick. Lineups without Giannis or LeBron on DraftKings. Horrible strategy? No.
No, I have either LeBron or Giannis in the majority of my lineups, but I don't think you necessarily have to play either or both of them.
No, not at all. I mean, you could pretty easily get to a few of the other pieces at the top and be perfectly fine, or just assume that AD outscores LeBron. Like it can just start pretty easily there. And we are locked. 7:30 on the dot. Thank you for hanging out for the past hour with us, but go nowhere. Stay right here. We're not going anywhere. For the next 25 minutes, we are breaking down some Jock Market. Let's see what we've got. There's the Jock Market call. I like it. I like it a lot. So I did, in fact, get my shares of both RJ Barrett and Elfrid Payton. So I have RJ Barrett at a cost of $6.83. I have Elfrid Payton at a cost of $5.04. And I will say that the last time you and I did this together, I came out in the green, my man. So I'm feeling pretty confident here because once you do something once successfully, you will only ever do it successfully in the future.
Well, if you remember correctly, last Thursday was Shake Milton night, and that was where I was lamenting that I had a bunch of shares of Shake Milton on Jock Market. Didn't really go all that poorly. That ended up being a very good player to have shares of. By the way, because they sent us, I don't know if you saw in Slack, but they sent us a report of the most positive players over the last week. Shake Milton, right up there since they've launched, is one of the best plays that they've had on the entire site. And of course, that was where when I had a significant amount of money invested in FanDuel and DraftKings, and of course, that was the Shake Milton night that blew up my Twitter mentions.
So I'm looking at some prices right now. You could buy Giannis for $19, LeBron for $17, Julius Randle for $16. There's a $14.50 ask on Curry. Trying to see if anybody's slipping through the cracks. Middleton at 11.5. That's getting closer. I'm going to cough again.
So the players that the players that, by the way, Josh is just going to keel over and die during the stream. And on one hand, I'd be sad, but it would also do really good numbers. And I think that would be a benefit to everybody involved here. I tried to place bids on Giannis and Gobert earlier in the day. I was outbid on them. Not something I was aware of until just now, though, because it's hard to pay attention to what my bids are doing while we're doing all the other stuff in the show. And I'm trying to monitor Josh's overall health and well-being while we're doing the show also. So I don't have bids on anybody, and I'm going to try to get shares of people now. Let's see. Has the Knicks, or not the Knicks, has the Lakers Bucks game actually tipped off yet?
I just bought one share of Mitchell Robinson.
Okay. Let me bring up.
Picked it up at $6.22.
Let's go over some of these numbers here. Is there anybody who their actual price of what they got bought for is way different than what you were expecting?
Not really. Not that I'm seeing so far. So I had unadjusted for risk. Obviously, I'm sure you saw that same email that we got about my original breakdown of pricing. So I have not adjusted at all for the risk portion of this. So what I have done up to this point, I can try to walk through it for people. I run the same simulations that I run for FanDuel and for DraftKings, but I do it for Jock Market. And then I basically count the amount of times that, say, Giannis is the highest scorer on the slate. And that gets multiplied out by the payout for first. I do the same thing for second, for third, for fourth. I add all those together, but I did not incorporate any sort of like discounted risk rate or anything along those lines. So these are just raw numbers because I just wanted to see what the raw data was. So like somebody like Giannis, in theory, I could probably, if I wanted to treat it as if risk was irrelevant, I could scoop up Giannis at the $19 ask right now because I had him at $20.83. I don't agree with my thought process there. I probably do need a discount rate in here, but I think that price is pretty close. Most of these guys were all within like 2 rankings points. So I rank everybody first through whatever. I think that's the easiest way to like cross look at these guys more so than like the projection piece of it. I rarely see anybody that's off by more than 2 spots. So me getting to RJ Barrett and to Peyton was because they were differing more so than anybody else.
All right, just so I have a little bit of skin in this because I wasn't able to bid on anybody, I'm going to go after Draymond Green, who has an asking price of $5.67 right now.
I like it. I had him at a true price of $6.60.
So let's see.
If you don't move fast enough, I'm going to snipe your picks.
Well, let's see if I was able to get the order. Did I get him? All right, I have 1 share of Draymond Green.
Just one, huh?
Yep,
okay.
that was all that was available.
Okay. Do you see how many? So when you did that, like, do you see the same $5.67 ask price right now?
Yes.
Okay. So did you just enter 567 and try to buy as many shares as you could?
Yes, and it was only 1 share.
Okay. Well, it's still there right now at 567. So I'm going to see if I can pick them up.
Oh, are you going to try to outbid me here? You're gonna undercut me on while we're doing the show?
Well, it didn't work. It says 567 ask, but that apparently they're asking for something else now.
I wonder if it takes a second. Yeah, go ahead.
It probably does. The asking price on Mitchell Robinson now set at $7.77. That is $1.20 north of my purchase price.
You gonna try to flip him and turn a profit?
No, but I could list a little bit lower than that and be like the leader in the clubhouse at the very least. The current bid price is $653, which is exactly what my purchase price is. So if I wanted to get out of the Mitchell Robinson business, I can do that immediately. Guys, use the promo code Awesemo20 if you want to sign up at Jock Market, by the way. Get yourself a $20 bonus on your first deposit.
Let me see who else in here. Draymond was the only player who stuck out to me as somebody who was going undervalued, at least at the current prices. I wish I could short some of these people.
So you and me both, and I've had that thought process quite a few times. I would short Alec Burks right now.
I would not, because I don't want to bet against my DFS lineups.
Sure.
I would short Jordan Clarkson.
You know where he is. Oh my God. Yeah, I would absolutely short Jordan Clarkson by like a lot.
Jordan Clarkson's the number 1 player that stands out to me that I would short.
Eric Bled, there's an ask on Eric Bledsoe right now for $4.83, if that's of any interest.
It's a little aggressive for me.
Okay.
Especially with the negative bonus, I don't know if we call it a bonus, but the negative points for missed shots.
Well, I'm trying to buy some Eric Bledsoe shares. Oh, I bought 3 shares of Eric Bledsoe. Right out of the gate, got them all at that spot.
Well, they couldn't wait to get rid of their Eric Bledsoe. Somebody had some real Eric Bledsoe regrets.
Not this guy. I had him at a true price of $6.07.
How many minutes do you expect him to play tonight?
I think I gave him 30.
I have him for a little bit less than that.
Let me look. I'm almost positive it's 30. He's not on Milwaukee anymore, dummy.
Nope. They are playing tonight, though, the Bucks.
Yeah, I gave him 30.
I had him for 28.
Okay.
Still trying to get more shares of Draymond Green. That seems like everybody's holding onto their Draymond. They don't want to part ways with him.
I think I could even buy more. I could pick up more Eric Bledsoe right now. I'm down for that.
Let me look. I didn't look all the way down at the prices. I feel like it's really tough to find somebody for cheap, particularly on this slate that has potential to have a good game. Let's see, their asking prices are really cheap for any of these guys.
Yeah, I picked up 2 more shares of Bledsoe. So right now I have 2 shares of Mitchell Robinson, 5 of Barrett, 8 of Elfrid Payton, and 5 of Eric Bledsoe. Knicks, Pels. Go Knicks, man.
It would be cool if we get a good Knicks game. I can't believe how much Knicks I've rostered in DFS this year, just compared to previous seasons where I wanted nothing to do with that rotation. But it's really the complete opposite now. When they play with Jeff Hornacek, you just have no clue who is playing minutes at any given time. Even to the point where there were days where he wouldn't release his starting lineup until 5 minutes before tip because he thought there was some kind of competitive advantage over other teams. And now you've got Tom Thibodeau, who you know who he's starting, and generally they're going to play like 40 minutes, other than Elfrid Payton, who the minutes are totally sporadic with. But everybody
hopefully
else,
it's 40 today.
Yeah, hopefully. But yeah, if you go to Elfrid Payton, well, number one, we also have Alec Burks in the mix. Although with that said, also Austin Rivers is out, so that benefits Payton. But
so there's a guy in YouTube chat, Brian. You'll never walk alone. So I assume a Liverpool fan. Tough day for us, by the way. I got 12 shares of Randall at $9.34 a share. That's bonkers to me. I had him at $14 and 15 shares of Middleton at $7.70 a share. Middleton, a guy that I had at $12 risk free. So Brian, I think you made 2 really nice purchases.
Yeah. I mean, if those are the numbers you got on, those are definitely numbers I want to be higher than. I mean, the asking price for Randall right now is $15.75 a share. So it's a big difference in what you have him for. I mean, not that anybody's going to necessarily buy those shares at $15.75, but
yeah,
you got yourself a bargain in Julius Randle. Who?
Yeah, that's a really nice price for Randall.
I have Randall as the third best in terms of total points on the slate. Giannis number 1 by a pretty wide margin. LeBron 2, Randall 3. Hilariously minimal gap between LeBron James and Julius Randle, though.
You have Randall ahead of AD.
Yes.
Okay. I have AD by 3 points.
It's just the playing time. I mean, Look at Anthony Davis. He played 37 minutes last game, but the games before that, 33, 25, 28, 29. Whereas Randall, I mean, you're getting right around 38 plus minutes every single slate from Julius Randle. So it was just the difference in minutes. Randall recent games, 39, 31 in a 30-point game against the Bucks. But then other than that, I mean, 38, 40 minutes. Unless it's a blowout, you're getting 38 to 40 minutes from Julius Randle.
Guillermo in the YouTube chat says, what do you guys mean by shares of players? Guillermo, this is Jock Market. So you should go to JockMKT.com and check it out. But this is a stock market of basketball players.
Or
you should download the app on your phone.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if you just want to understand what the company is, if you're sitting on the computer, that will also help you. But you're going to need to download their app to play. But each player is a stock, fully traded throughout their games. So if you want to sell out early on someone popping off, like if you have a lot of Dante DiVincenzo and he goes crazy in the first quarter, it's not outside of the realm of possibility that you want to sell those shares off and just cash in at an earlier time. Possible. I'm feeling pretty good about the guys that I have right now. So I assume the Golden State Warriors beat the Knicks by 1,000.
Yeah, but hopefully Draymond Green outperforms his stock price.
I'm going to go ahead and say I don't hope that happens because he's the one guy I don't have. Although I do have him in DFS, so I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, also, my one share of Draymond Green, I don't think that's going to be what makes or breaks my night. But I mean, I would like it for it to go well, and I'm trying to buy more Draymond Green if these people would, let me. It looks like the asking price for Draymond is now up to $650.
Yeah, to me, that's the fair price. To me, that's the fair price. Good question coming here from YouTube chat right now. Do you keep them for multiple games? No. So this is a one and done. At the end of the slate, everybody gets ranked by how many fantasy points they have. So the guy with the highest fantasy point total for the day gets paid out a certain amount per share. Second place gets paid out a little bit less than that. Third, a little bit less than that. Fourth, a little bit less than that. Straight down the line. So if you have shares of the number one scoring player of the slate, those shares pay out at, I believe, $25 per share. And then it works its way down to like 24, 22, 20, 18, all the way down to $1 per share at the bottom end.
Also, you don't have to even hold them on for one entire game. Yes, you keep them for multiple games. You could keep them for 5 minutes if you want to. You could keep them for zero. You could sell them before the game even starts if the price moves a lot and you want to just try to take a profit, or for some reason you buy them at a price and want to flip them for less than you bought them for. That is also an option that you could do. But yeah, there is no set amount of time that you have to hold any player you purchase them for. You could buy and sell at any point in time during the slate.
Have we tipped off yet? We certainly have not. All games on TNT, no wonder.
Yeah, the game might not even tip off by the time the stream ends.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of when this stream ends, so we're going to be here for another 10 minutes talking a little bit of Jock Market, but coming up immediately after this, 8 p.m. Now, this one's actually going to be on a different stream link. MMA Strategy Show, breaking down this Saturday's UFC pay-per-view. Jason Floyd, Pete the Heat Rogers, going through every single fight on the card and giving you guys the goods in preparation for Saturday. And then you'll get a live before lock from the guys as well on Saturday. And I really cannot wait to watch that card. I assume you're in the same boat.
For sure. It's a loaded card too, not just the main event. There's a whole bunch of cards throughout the night that I'm looking forward to. There's a bunch of fighters that I really like, both old and young guys. Like I like Arman Sarukian a lot. He's fighting Nazar Haqparast. That's a fight that I'm very excited about. So yeah, I'm pretty pumped for the card this week. I wish we had this game to actually talk about if it ever tipped off.
Same.
But it's apparently not happening. How about this?
Yeah.
What are some things you're looking for early on in the Lakers-Bucks game that could change how you look at some of these guys? Anything in terms of substitution patterns, maybe somebody getting in foul trouble. Is anything like that at least on your mind? I know that's a pretty broad question, but hey, we're expecting the game to have started by now. Anything like that could impact how you'd be looking to approach any of these guys on Jock Market?
So I would look a little bit at any sort of aggressive foul trouble from Marc Gasol. If he happens to pick up any quick fouls out of the gate, trying to grab Montrezl Harrell shares and maybe just flip him pretty quickly. Not that I think that he's going to end up, super high, but if he can pick up an extra minute or two, maybe you can squeeze a little value out there. On the Milwaukee side, maybe Brook Lopez foul trouble would be something that would lead you to a little bit more Bobby Portis. Although against the Lakers, depending on how they change that up, they can go a few different directions. It's a weird game just because of the way that these teams are constructed. Anybody that goes off in the first rotation is not somebody that I am probably going to want to immediately try to get any shares of. I probably wouldn't. I don't have any AD, LeBron, or Giannis, and I think it would be really difficult for me to end up with any of those guys today. So nothing stands out right out of the gate. It would mostly just be foul trouble for the bigs, and I think that's probably sort of a universal tenet across any sort of game, especially ones with firm backups.
So with Giannis, and I think about this a lot, and I haven't paid attention enough to how the Jock Market moves after the first 15 minutes of games. And this is a very particular slate, especially because there's only going to be one game going on, which might have people paying attention a little bit closer. We see this from DFS people all the time. If somebody gets off to a slow start, they get taken out of the game early, get in foul trouble, people absolutely lose their mind. This happens a lot. Oftentimes, Giannis subs out fairly quickly in the first quarter. This is a very particular game against the Lakers where maybe they'll run different rotations and try to have LeBron and Giannis on the court more at the same time. If Giannis gets off to a slow start and subs out at the 5-minute mark, which we see a lot, I do wonder if there's a chance that his price just takes a big downtick and people panic and want to get off him. That would be a situation where I'd look to get in on Giannis. And the other thing, too, is if Giannis subs out of the game early, unless it's for foul trouble, because he does get in foul trouble a lot, if he just subs out of the game early, he does that a lot. It's not something to freak out about. So I'm wondering if maybe he gets off to a slow start, subs out early in the first quarter, if that causes people to overreact, and maybe then he becomes available for cheaper than we'd think.
How much would you be willing to spend on a Giannis Antetokounmpo share in that scenario?
I guess it depends how low it goes. Probably
let's say it's 1801. That is a 1 penny more than third place pays.
I think I'd have to go a little bit lower than that, just because I'm really looking for value here. But yeah, probably anything $17 or below. I think that would be a good point to jump on. And for what it's worth right now, the asking price for him is $19. So I'm assuming that if there's a situation where he struggles early and subs out, the asking price would have to be a little bit lower than that. So I think anywhere around the $17 mark is probably where I'd be looking to jump on Giannis.
Okay. Ben P also asked the question, do you know how many shares they issue of each player? I was looking, but I don't see it anywhere. They do not announce how many shares there are. I can tell you that it is an equal amount of shares across every player. So the same amount of shares exist for Giannis as they do for Brad Wanamaker.
I think Giannis scores more fantasy points tonight.
Yeah, I should hope so, man. I don't even think you could simulate this world infinitely, and I don't think it's possible for Brad Wanamaker to do more than Giannis unless Giannis breaks his leg, like
by the way,
Gordon Hayward.
Wanamaker probably wasn't the best example because he isn't on the slate. So they don't issue the same amount of shares to Giannis as they do to Brad Wanamaker, but they do issue the same. Is he? Did I spell his name wrong when I searched him? That's very possible.
It depends where you searched.
I don't see him.
BRAD.
I know what
he's on the Warriors, so like
I know he's on the Warriors, but
I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's not available, so that's a bad example. But like,
yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. He's not available on Jock Market.
Okay, well that I didn't know, but obviously, I was like, come on, man. Like, you had me starting to think, like, shit, is he on the Celtics?
No, he's just. So that's the other thing. Also, is they don't have every single player on the slate. They issued shares for 48 players tonight.
Okay.
The cheapest being DJ Augustin tonight. Wanamaker was not one of them.
White Morgan Freeman says Bard Wanamaker. That's good stuff. Sebastian says, why did the Awesemo 20 promo not go to my account? How do you redeem the 20? I'm guessing it might take a little bit. Leslie, I see that you are in chat right now. If you have anything to follow up with for Sebastian, you would probably know more than I would, but I'm guessing it's just not fully immediate.
See if we got any questions in Slack.
Coleman Williford says Rivers was ruled out and Frank Ntilikina. Does that change anyone's minutes? No, we have been assuming that Austin Rivers wasn't playing today, and I've been assuming that Frank Ntilikina wasn't playing for most of this.
That would be really crazy. Imagine if Frank Ntilikina, who
game started.
Oh wow! There we go. Well, only 4 minutes before we get off the air. So
yeah. Giannis with a bucket to start. It's the only stat that I see thus far.
All right. Well, there it is. Hot start for Giannis, according to all the DFS people who make all the reactions based on however the game starts. I'm sure there's already people in our Slack chat that are saying Giannis or go to bed. Like Giannis or no cash today because he scored the first basket of the
Seth,
game.
Unfortunately. One foul on AD. He fouled Giannis on what seems like a shooting foul. Giannis missed a free throw. LeBron got a defensive rebound. 2-2. So Lakers on the board. And that is a bucket going to... Okay, so it's 4-2, but the NBA.com box score just simply does not update with that information, even though, by the way, above it does.
The NBA app and the NBA box scores have totally crapped the bed this year. It was something that was really good in the past. They scrapped the old app. You had to download a new one this year, and it sucks. The old one was miles better.
I loved the old app, and this is just a steaming pile right now.
Yeah, it's not very good. At least, it's convenient, though, is when you try to watch games and it takes a really long time to buffer and then you can't see anything. And then just random games are blacked out. That's another feature I really like about it.
Amazing. AD on the board with 2 points. Braun, 2 boards and an assist. Schroeder with a rebound. DiVincenzo assist. Ooh, yeah. I have nothing to do with this game, so it really doesn't matter. But it's great for my DFS teams.
So... let's see what that's done on the Jock Market. Just a few more minutes until we get off the air. Except let's see any players who. By the way, there's currently no asking price for Giannis. Nobody's selling him. Everybody's like, hey, Giannis scored the first bucket of the game. We're pulling him off the market. We're not selling any shares. So even if you wanted Giannis, you couldn't get him. LeBron, the asking price, $16.74. The asking price for Anthony Davis, $16.99. That is very high for me for Anthony Davis to begin with, especially considering he picked up one early foul. That's a pretty big concern.
Yeah, that price on LeBron is actually below my risk-free price. So like it's
the $16.74.
Yeah, by 10 cents. Knicks tweet Burks available, Ntilikina and Austin Rivers out. Okay.
All right. Yeah, Frank Ntilikina has not played for a while, and he was doubtful to play today. So, yeah, that would have been quite the panic if Frank Ntilikina was playing, as somebody asked about before.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no ability to buy Giannis at this moment. Nothing else really going crazy. I know one thing I want to potentially. Does the search work like this? No. I'd love to be able to filter the active market for particular games or particular teams. So I'd love to just filter this down to just LA and Milwaukee. Got you, dude. I could start grinding this up now.
Yeah, I know nobody else heard that, but that was very funny.
Yeah, I wish you guys could have heard what we just heard in our ear. So, guys, that's going to do it. We are going to pack this one in now and turn this one over to the MMA Strategy Show. So, thank you everybody for sticking around, for watching it. I wish we could have got a little bit more game time going on for this one, but we're going to be doing this pretty regularly moving forward. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Thank you very much to Jock Market for being the presenting sponsor of this show. I'm really enjoying the mechanism by which their site is run. I've got my shares in the books. We'll find out how it does. Maybe we could touch on it a little bit tomorrow morning on the NBA Strategy Show, although I believe there are 11 games tomorrow. I don't know how many more have been canceled since then, so it could be 9 or 8. I have no idea any longer, but I know it's a big slate, so maybe we won't have time, but we could talk about it later. But that's 7:55. Greg, any final thoughts?
No, not really. Hopefully, you know what actually be cool? I'm going to root for a late scratch from the late game so we could open up some value. Pay attention to the news and follow us on at Awesemo NBA, because there is not very much value on the slate. People do not like to late swap in NBA, especially not late on a Thursday night. So somebody gets ruled out, you follow us on Twitter, you get that news, and you get a little bit of value maybe comes in your life on the NBA slate. Turn on the notifications too.
You're crazy for wanting news, but they're late news and late scratch. You're out of your mind for that, but absolutely follow at Awesemo NBA. Get the updates. El Negro Loco, the news god himself, bringing you all the deets. Tyler, take us out of here. Good luck, everybody. We out.